Tonight, I'm joined by Chris from Chris Cooking Nashville. He's built a huge community around keto, carnivore, and low carb cooking, and he brings rock and roll personality to everything that he makes. But what really made me want to reach out and have this conversation is how honest he's been about the parts of his health journey that don't really fit neatly into before and after photos, the setbacks, the weight gain, the mental health aspect of it, and the decision to keep moving forward. So, Chris, I really appreciate you coming on. You're doing awesome things. I was really looking forward to this conversation since I reached out to you. But I really appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, Anthony, thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on. And yeah, there's a lot to be said for before and after pictures, but there's a whole lot more that needs to be said that happens in between those two things. And it is a journey. It is a journey learning to help ourselves and help others. So
Awesome. Well, for anybody, this is the first time seeing you. Take me back to who are you? What do you do? What got you started? All the stuff.
yeah. Yeah, so I'm Chris, better known online as Chris Cooking Nashville. My wife, Ash Taylor, is an independent recording artist here in Nashville. I'm a professional studio session touring guitar player, and I was an artist and songwriter in my own right as well. And the two of us are pro musicians. We tour around the country and we play, and we live the musician lifestyle, and that was one of many factors that was part of getting me to a point of being over 400 pounds. The beer, the pizza, the fast food, the late nights, the stress, all of those sorts of things. And so back in 2020, this little thing happened that kind of ruined the entertainment industry for everybody for a while. And in the midst of that, Ash and I lost everything, our jobs, the house that we were living in, that we were renting. One of my cars, or my car blew up. So one of our cars was gone. We had to buy a car at the worst time to buy one in history. We just lost everything. And so the only thing we had left, just trying to stay off the streets, was we got some day jobs. And the only thing we could really control we had left was our health. And we were both in really poor health, just had not been taking care of ourselves for a long time. So I learned about keto because my dad sent me some stuff, some videos by a guy named Dr. Barry. And I learned all about what keto was. So we started implementing a clean keto diet and, whole ingredients, low carb veg, mostly meat, that kind of a thing, high fat. And we started losing weight. We started feeling a lot better. And this was really, really good. This is in 2021. Really good. Ash and I were getting ready to get married, and I wanted to look as good as I could for wedding photos. So I had heard about this thing called Carnivore, and I thought, well, it's just like a supercharged weight loss version of keto, right? And that's what I really wanted to use it for. And I really didn't intend to stick with it, permanently or anything like that. I just thought, well, I'll use this, I'll lose some extra weight. My weight loss had slowed down a bit on keto, and I was trying to, make it happen. And so I was like, well, I'll do this until the wedding, and and then I'll kind of go back to keto and whatever. So I started carnivore, and I guess it was about 2 weeks into carnivore. Um, I looked at Ash and I said, something is different. And she goes, well, I'm glad you said something because I didn't really want to like jinx it and say something that maybe I was making it up. But she was like, yeah, something is different about you. I was waking up smiling. And she was like, you wake up smiling. I've never seen you do that. And something lifted, some fog, some um, just some very unusual weight that had been in my mind and all over my body, not physically, but something that was just inexplicable. It was gone. It lifted, and I was like, I was enjoying my life in a way that I hadn't since I was a kid. And I remember telling Ash, like, is this what everyone else feels like? Because if this is what you're supposed to feel like every day, this is not fair. I have not been living the way that you're supposed to. So carnivore was great. We got married, and after we got married, I never dealt with my carb addiction. Okay, I never took seriously the fact that I was a binge eater, that I was really addicted to things that were not good for me, the soda, the fast food, all these different things. And I thought, well, I can have a little of this, I can have a little of that. And I kind of thought I had it all under control. And what ended up happening is I essentially went back off the rails because it flared up this addiction, and addiction is no joke. Whether it's food, drugs, alcohol, does not matter. Addiction is not something to play around with. And so it flared this back up. I ended up gaining a lot of my weight back, and I just kind of felt out of control. And I was negotiating with myself. Why could I have a little of this? Why did I not need to do it today? Whatever. And my brain just went back to that place. And I was struggling and I gained a lot of weight and I was sick and miserable. It was not good. So we were getting ready to move out of the apartment that we were in. It was on the third floor. I couldn't go up and down stairs without being super out of breath, let alone I was going to be able to carry anything. And so I looked at Ash and I said, I've got to go back to carnivore. I've got to do it. I know this is what works. It's going to make me feel better. We're going to be moving in a few months. I'm not going to be able to carry anything. We're not going to be able to move out of here if I don't. And she was full support. She said, you go back to carnivore. I'm going back to meat heavy keto. We need to take care of ourselves. So I did. At the same time, I decided to start a YouTube channel, and I was going to do vlogs, like weekly updates on my health journey so I could have kind of a record of where I started. I was going to share the food that I was eating, and I wanted to get back in the kitchen because when I did carnivore the first time, I did like meat, salt, water, like strict, right? And maybe some limited dairy. I did pretty strict, and I used it as an elimination diet, which was great. But I lost something that was really important to me, and that was cooking and being creative in the kitchen. And so I wanted to bring that back because I realized for sustainability, it didn't matter how perfect doing meat salt water was. If I wasn't going to sustain that lifestyle and feel happy and satisfied, then there's no point in doing it in the first place because good that you keep doing is better than perfect that you fail. So I started doing some recipe videos and sort of creating some carnivore recipes because there weren't many people doing that back then. And I was doing my vlogs and we moved and I was doing this stuff. And so I put out a couple of videos and I reached out to this lady, Anita, at Ketogenic Woman. And she was creating carnivore recipes at the time. She has an amazing story. I don't know why, what possessed me to reach out to her. I'd been watching her stuff, but I just decided to send her an email and say, hey, I watch you, and here's a recipe video I did. Thought you might like it. And she says that she doesn't really remember what it was, but something about my email stuck out to her. And so she actually read it. She actually watched the video that I sent her. And then she responded to me and she said, you're doing something really cool. And I think the carnivore world needs to see it. So she shared this recipe. She featured it in one of her videos and told her subscribers, go follow Chris. He's doing cool stuff. And I had this name, Chris Cooking Nashville, from an old Instagram that I used to put food pics on back when I owned a micro sourdough bakery. That's what part of what got us through the pandemic. And so I was putting all this food stuff on there. So I just kept that name and I moved it over into YouTube world and I started this Chris Cooking Nashville thing. And suddenly Anita's telling everybody to go follow Chris Cooking Nashville. And I got this little boost of subscribers. And I was working three jobs at the time. And Ash was like, when are you going to have time to start a YouTube channel? And I said, I don't know, but I need to do this because if I inspire even one person, then it will have been worth doing it. And then once Anita shared stuff and I got a little boost of subscribers, I said, I need to post a recipe every week. And Ash is like, you're working full time, plus you're a musician. I had gotten out of the third job by that point, but I was still working two jobs and doing YouTube. And she's like, how are you going to post a video, a recipe every single week to film that, to edit that, to create the recipes, whatever? And I said, I don't know, but I got to figure it out because this needs to be done and people need to be helped. And so I did. And next thing you know, here we are. We're getting close to 150,000 subscribers. And my first cookbook is being published by Victory Belt. That comes out October 6th. Be available, with international distribution. I have a private community called The Band where I help people. The Culinary Coach and Dr. Barry's group, The Tribe, the PhD community, have gotten to meet and collaborate with many of the low carb creators that I was watching, that I was learning from, and I speak and I do live streams like this and all this kind of stuff, and it's become a full-time job. And that's what I do now is I spend my time trying to help people and try to help them on their health journey. And to date, I've lost about 130 pounds. I still have some more to go, but I'm actually working on a new um, sort of tightening the reins thing that I'm calling my shred protocol. And as I'm sort of experimenting on myself with it, and it's working and things are good. And then that will be something I'll be sharing in the future of just, it's not medical advice and I'm certainly not a nutritionist, but I'll just share with people what I did and how I kind of kicked the weight loss stall and all that stuff. So that's kind of how I got here. And so now I'm known as Chris Cooking Nashville, and I'm the crazy keto and carnivore recipe guy that makes mashed potatoes out of egg whites.
No, that's awesome, and I do need to try that. Like I said, Dustin did bring it up, and that is something that I'm going to have to try because I do miss mashed potatoes. But where would you kind of put yourself now? Are you more, seeing as you've been doing it for so long, are you more carnivore? Are you ketovore? Are you keto? I know your recipes are low carb in general, so it's not in any one, right?
Yeah, I really I really love the way Dr. Barry has put this. He and I are I love the Barrys. Dr. Barry and Nisha are both fantastic people. And the reason that I've connected with them, I think from the beginning so much is we just see eye to eye on a lot of stuff and I think they make a lot of sense. So, I just look at a lot of the stuff they say and have learned a lot from that. And so one of the things that Dr. Barry has said that when I heard him say it, I was like, yeah, that's how I feel about this too. He talks about the proper human diet and it's a spectrum, right? And it goes all the way from lion diet, where it's red meat, salt, and water, all the way to the loosest version of low carb, general low carb with whole foods that makes you feel amazing. And it's everywhere in between. So anymore, I lean to the carnivore direction most of the time. Like I am mostly focused on getting that animal protein and animal fat. That is what I do. Some days I am absolutely completely carnivore. Other days I lean a little more in the ketovore direction. It just kind of depends on what I'm doing. I also know the things keto or ketovore type stuff that makes me feel good and the things that make me not feel so good because I did this as an elimination diet at the beginning. I kind of know that. So I tend to stay in the carnivore ketovore end of that spectrum. Um, but like yesterday was my birthday. I made a keto cheesecake and I actually filmed a video and had my parents do a taste test of that. That's going to be coming out probably this weekend. So, things like that. I love inventing those recipes as well. And I use them occasionally because it makes me stable, and I try to stay as clean and strict as I can as often as I can, but I'm also not in the pursuit of perfection ruining my progress, if that makes sense. And so I see it as a spectrum and I tend to stick in the dirty carnivore, if you want to call it that, realm most of the time.
I got you. Well, first, happy belated birthday. All right.
Thank you.
So, hope you had a great one. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think that's super important because a lot of people, myself included, you get started and it's like if you slip up even a little bit, it's the
Hmm.
end of the world and you might as well throw in the towel and everything. Burn it all down. We'll restart. In a month or a year or
Yeah.
whenever. And that's real because you hold yourself to such
Hmm.
a high standard that you get just crushed when there's even a
Hmm.
little bit of movement on it. But to your point, you can't do that forever, right?
Yeah.
You have to be able to live your life. You're never gonna be perfect forever, right?
Hmm.
So giving yourself that little bit of wiggle where you're like, yeah, um, had a keto cheesecake, or good example. This weekend we had family come by, and I've been trying to stick very pretty carnivore,
Hmm.
allowing seasonings and things like that because I do want to enjoy it.
Yeah.
But they all wanted to go out to eat. It's like that's always rough. What are we
Hmm.
cooking in? What are we doing? So we went to a Mexican restaurant and just had the fajita plate.
Hmm.
Didn't eat the carb, just had the meat, and then there's bell peppers and onions, right?
Yep.
That technically not carnivore, right? But
Right.
I also, I'm about 95%. So
Hmm.
95% still an A. That's a win. That day's a win.
Yeah.
So not letting it tear down the rest of it, knowing that yeah, I can go back to tomorrow and
Hmm.
do more strict, and just not let it ruin the whole progress.
Right.
And then have the mental health aspect of I am going to have better days than others. They're all
Yeah.
not going to be tens, and allow yourself a little bit of grace. So, I mean,
Yeah.
you've clearly talked about that and learned a lot about that.
Yeah, well, there's a psychological concept, and I'm studying a little bit about this, and I'm drawing a blank on the name right now, so I apologize. But essentially, this concept, this is when you set up a false narrative of rules that are requiring you to be perfect. And you essentially are setting yourself up for when you fail, not if, when, because human beings are not perfect. When you fail, because you can just find infinite layers that you could possibly fail and then see that as a failure with these kinds of things as the human experience goes. And when you set yourself up with this false set of rules and you make yourself susceptible to failure, this is a measurable thing that psychologists have studied where you fail. And what happens is because you set up rules for yourself that weren't really attainable in the first place, and then you failed yourself, you actually start this guilt and shame spiral psychologically. Like they can actually measure the hormones in your brain shifting, they can see the brain waves change. You actually change the way your brain thinks about this stuff. And you go down this psychological rabbit hole of thinking of yourself as a failure, and you have guilt and you have shame. And then that doubles on the pressure of you're not good enough and you can't do this perfectly. And it makes it even harder to get back on the wagon. So this is one of the things I experienced this, right? I think you say this is kind of something you've struggled with here. This is what a lot of us go through. You set yourself up to have to do it perfectly. And then you can't because nobody is perfect and no life is ever going to be perfect. And then you get infinitely minute and granular in all of the ways that you're not going to be perfect if you do a little of this or a little of that. That steak was cooked in seed oils because it was at a restaurant. They had bell peppers on the plate next to the food that I mean, there's so many ways you can make it not perfect. So if you set yourself up with perfection being the only way to achieve your goals, you are inevitably going to fail that. If that's your mindset, if you have that dogmatic view, you are going to fail. And when you fail, you are going to kickstart a psychological process of guilt and shame that makes it even harder to get back on, and especially harder to continue and sustain long term, because then you go into it with the fear. What happens the next time that I'm not perfect? It's going to be even worse. And it just, it snowballs. It turns into this really, really difficult thing. So it's, it's great that we shoot for doing the best we absolutely can all the time. Yes, of course, that's what we want to do. But it's understanding as well that as human beings, there are days that we're just not perfect. And that is okay, provided that we go, okay, I recognize that wasn't the greatest choice. That wasn't perfect. Let's go ahead and just jump back on the wagon. We pretend yesterday didn't happen. No big deal. And we just go right back to it. And it's like you said, 95% of the time, that's still an A. And if you're doing things like you go to the Mexican restaurant and you eat the fajita meat and the onions and bell peppers that came with it, as opposed to what most people are out there eating, you're doing better than 95% of the people in the United States at this point. So it's like, I think we can offer ourselves a little bit of grace and just try to make tomorrow a little better than today.
And that's the thing is we would give anybody else in our life that grace, right? If somebody close to you has a slip up, hey, you know
Hmm.
what? Let's get through this. You know, whatever it is, we'll figure out why it happened. Try to reverse engineer, not let it happen again, or I'll help you out. But the moment it's you, it's different, right? Oh, I'm the
Yeah,
worst person. Oh, I might as well just give up. It just
right.
we have that weird thing where you hold yourself to a standard that you wouldn't hold anybody else to, and there's a reason that the yo-yo effect happens all the time. People lose weight and then they don't gain it all back because they had a day of bad eating. It's a
Hmm.
day of bad eating turns into a month, turns into a year, because of that spiral you're talking about, and it's
Yeah,
just it's crazy. People are odd, I'm no different.
yeah.
You're no different. Everybody has that in them, and we all recognize it, but I don't know. It's one of those things. I don't get it, but I also nobody does, right? So
Right,
just
right.
recognize it and give yourself some grace. So awesome. Yeah. Well, I mean, so you started hearing from people like Dr. Barry, who again,
Hmm.
if you've looked anywhere online on how to reverse diabetes or lower triglycerides, you've seen him, right?
Yeah.
And I saw a video just the other day where he's like, if the worst thing you do, similar to what you said, is cheat on carnivore with some Brussels sprouts, great. And
Yeah.
that's something that more and more people need to hear. But there's so many folks out there that are also very, very dogmatic, and I can't really hold it
Hmm.
against them because a lot of these people, it saved their life, and they want what's best for you. So you kind of got to give them a little grace too, and say, "I get it, back off a
Hmm.
little bit. I get it. Like
Yeah.
I posted a video where I was like, hey, I'm gonna put some Montreal seasoning on my pork chop. Hey, at this, and I get a comment. Hey, at this point, you might as well just be drinking straight seed oil. I'm like, we're being a little hyperbolic. We might want to roll it in a little bit. For me, I don't
Right.
care. Say what you want, but
Hmm.
for some people, they'll take that and they'll be like, you're right, and they'll dwell on it. And it's
Yeah.
one of those things where we need to be a little bit better about
Hmm.
giving strangers grace too. 99
Yeah.
point 99% of everybody I talk to or hear from is super positive, but you have those, and it's like, I get it. A lot of them could be trolls, but it could also be coming from a point where it's like, this saved my life and you're doing it wrong, and they're
Yeah.
overbearing because that doesn't help.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and one of the things that you can imagine, I'm sure, at the beginning of my channel, I got a lot of flack from the dogmatic side of everything, because I really twist and push and test the bounds of carnivore. Like that's what I do, and um, it's hard to draw a hard line in the sand of like this is carnivore and that is not, because it's like, okay, well, anything that's not animal matter, okay, well, then that's not carnivore. Right, but even the lion gets some of this grass that is in the stomach of the gazelle when it's eating it. So is a lion not carnivore? Right? Like it's there's such a weird thing when you try to draw a hard, strict line in a label. Like, there's obviously things that are not carnivore. Like, I'm sorry, if you're eating a whole bunch of fruit, fruit's not carnivore. Now, if you want to do meat and you want to eat fruit and you feel great, I'm not here to tell you not to. It's not my job to tell people what they should or shouldn't eat. I am not a doctor, but the fruit is not carnivore. I totally get that. So if you put seasonings on your food, that's not carnivore. So how much seasoning do you have to put on a steak before it's not carnivore? Because salt is also not an animal product, it's a mineral. So does it only count for minerals? If minerals, because they're not plants, are then considered carnivore, well, then carnivore is not really just animal products, it's animal products plus minerals. And like, there's so many ways you can argue, semantics of these things. And in the meantime, we could have just been eating generally carnivore food and just been improving our health and supporting each other as a community, and we would all be better for it, right? So that's one of the things that I tend to really push back against the dogma, not because I really have anything in a particular axe to grind with the people who are dogmatic, but more because I know when I was 400 pounds and I was struggling and I was depressed and I was brain fogged and I didn't know what I was doing and I was trying to learn all this for the first time, if I had heard people saying that because I shared, hey, I'm trying this carnivore thing the first time, and if I shared a steak and they said, well, if you're going to put that seasoning on it, you may as well be dousing it in seed oils and you might as well do this and blah, 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 and it turns into that thing. I mean, that's the kind of thing that would have made me feel again like a failure because I was completely incapable of really supporting my own thought processes at that point because I was so sick and so deep in that struggle. That's the kind of stuff like you just don't know how close to the edge somebody really is. And so if carnivore is the thing that's going to save their life, but they use some seasonings on their steak and that's what keeps them stable, I really don't give a rip. Like, that's great, fantastic. Stick with it and keep eating your steak. But if we go out there and we take people like that and we tell them all the reasons it's not done right and that's not perfect and that's not whatever, well, then we're creating again that false narrative of perfection for them. And your comment to them that they're not doing it right, that may be the thing that makes them stop. And a year or 2 or 5 years from now, they may not be with us anymore because you couldn't keep your opinion to yourself. And so, I don't want to go to bed ever thinking that something I said to somebody might be the thing that means they don't get to live the rest of their life fully. And so I push back against that dogma, um, mostly in support of the people out there who can't really do it for themselves, because that's a place where I legitimately was. I mean, there were days that I went to bed and I'm like, if I don't wake up tomorrow, that'd be just fine because I'm so miserable. There's nothing good going on in my life. And, what would be the point? And God bless my wife for meeting me, seeing something underneath of all of that when I didn't really give her much of a reason to really stick around. And she saw what I could be, and she was like, no, you can be more than this. And she stuck with me and helped me pull myself up out of that, you know? And my parents have been very supportive. Like I've had some people in my life that have helped me get out of that place. And so I know what it's like to be there where someone jumping down your throat because you put Montreal steak seasoning on your steak might be the reason that you say, you know what, if this is the way I'm going to get treated by this community, then screw it. I'm just going to go order a pizza and eat until I finally have a heart attack. Like, I mean, I know those people are out there because I was one of those people, and I know I'm not alone. I get comments in the comment section all the time from people that are, expressing their appreciation for the fact that there is somewhere to go to not feel alone and not feel like you're going to get judged for every little thing you do wrong. So, yeah, it's I try to have as much grace as I possibly can, but given the choice between two people, I will always stand between the people who are attacking and the people who are being attacked unnecessarily because that's kind of become part of my mission as well.
Mhm. Yeah, and everybody's not there. Even if they think they're doing right, they're not all starting from the same spot. Some people they need to go as deep as lion diet, like salt, ruminant, water. Other people don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have negative kind of effects or any kind of autoimmune disorders that's combating, you don't necessarily need to. So why would you put yourself in a situation that's a little bit more strenuous than you need to? If like you can get by with the seasoning, you'd have to put so much seasoning on a steak to make it even a percentage point of the amount that you're ingesting because
Right.
the work's done by it's less about what you're putting in and what you're not putting. I'm not putting a whole pizza in, right? I'm putting something that's
Mm-hmm.
not going to have an inflammatory effect. And I've tested it, right? I
Yeah.
know that it doesn't affect me. So great. I get to enjoy that. Thank God I get to
Mm-hmm.
enjoy these things. And, it's one of those things where it's very personal. Some people need
Yeah.
that. Some people don't. Like you said, with Dr. Barry talking about the spectrum of the proper human diet, there's a lot of people way further to I can eat way more carbs than you and good for
Mm-hmm.
them. Awesome. Enjoy it. But
Yeah.
I'm right here in knowing where you are and kind of experimenting because like you said with the elimination diet, okay, I notice when I eat this I get really bloated or I get pains
Mm-hmm.
in my abdomen. That's you're figuring it out. Before it was just I don't know what's causing all the pain, it just hurts all the time, and it could be any
Right.
number of things, probably is a number of things. So being able to learn a little bit about yourself and not fall into that where it's like, okay, I understand that you have a comment to say, but it means hello, person I've never met before, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. Anywho, so why would you say weight gain isn't linear? Right. We had a little bit of a conversation before, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all part of the process, and everybody goes through it, and where we all have the self doubt and the negative talk, and we all
Mm-hmm.
gain weight back. It's not linear. It's a downward trend if you're doing it right, but it's never
Mm-hmm.
just straight line. Why is
Yeah.
that?
Well, do you know who Kelly Hogan is? Do you watch Kelly Hogan?
That sounds familiar. I'd recognize her if I saw her, probably.
Yeah, yeah, you'd probably really enjoy some of her stuff. I just did a recorded an interview with her on her channel or for her channel about a week and a half ago, I guess now. And we talked a little bit about this because that's something she really experienced and I've really experienced as well. And the way that she phrased it, which I thought was such a great way of saying this, weight loss, weight gain, any of these things it's not linear at all. It's not just this, downward trend. And in fact, sometimes it's also an upward trend and it goes back and forth and there's things that happen. There's a couple of things that I think factor into that. First of all, we have to understand what our body is doing scientifically. 1,000 years ago, if the human body, which basically has the same DNA as the human body we now have, if the human body 1,000 years ago started rapidly losing weight, that was bad. That was panic mode. I mean, that was you are not going to survive. Okay. Our body is not designed to be excessively overweight. So once we get excessively overweight, even if we do the right stuff to get it to lose weight, your body is probably going to panic at some point in time and go, why are we losing so much weight? Like there must be a famine. We're going to die. So it will put on the brakes and it will turn things around and it will try to gain stuff back. I mean, there's all kinds of things that go on. And this is something that I don't think a lot of people understand. Your body is so beautifully designed. It is so infinitely wise inside of the DNA. We think because the scale moves up or it moves down or it doesn't move at all that we know what's going on. But the scale tells us one thing, which is how much does gravity pull on your body. It's the only thing that it's telling us. And it's an arbitrary number that we've assigned to things. Like, what is a pound? Why did somebody decide that a pound is what it is? That arbitrary amount that was designed because of how it fit into society. So we're putting things into artificial frameworks and we're looking at something as shallow as how hard is gravity pulling on my body. And then we're saying, oh, we know exactly what's going on if that changes and goes up by a pound or two, or maybe it goes up by 10 or whatever. But there are so many other things that our body needs to do. So we can hold on to fluid. One of the things that I want so badly to just lovingly reach through the screen and grab people and shake them when they're like, I weigh every day and I went up 2 pounds today and I can't believe what did I do? I went up 2 pounds today. And I'm like, without trying to be too TMI, I can go in the bathroom and lose 2 pounds. I mean, like, I'm sorry, but 2 pounds doesn't mean anything. So if you're focused on that kind of stuff, you're not looking at the whole picture of how science and nutrition and our health and all of these things are connected. So there's a really important thing we have to remember there. We have to be able to differentiate between I gained a couple of pounds, I gained 10 pounds. Your body can fluctuate 5, even 10 pounds if you're swollen just in fluid. That is a completely different thing than over a period of 3 months gaining 20 or 30 pounds and noticing your clothes are not fitting. Those are two very different scenarios. So, one, we have to think about what's actually going on in terms of our health. And then, two, is our body afraid that it's starving, that it is about to expire? Because if it is going to halt everything that it possibly can because we need to make sure our body knows that it is safe and it is well nourished before it's going to then, okay, I'm going to go heal that. And sometimes the extra fat that is on our body is not the most important thing for it to heal. You know, when you're fasting and you enter autophagy, right, where you've been fasting long enough and your body goes into this process called autophagy and it's breaking down old, worn down cells all through your body. It breaks it into the pieces and then it can go use those pieces to build other healthier cells again. It's going to break down fat, absolutely. It's going to break down cancerous cells. It's going to break down damaged things. It's going to really improve your body on a cellular level. One, that does not happen fast. And two, you don't know that it's doing exactly what it's doing the entire time because you don't have a record of every cell in your body knowing which ones are good and which ones aren't. So if your body says, I have something more important to do than try to lose 5 pounds because you're going to go to the beach next month, right? We can't be upset about that. We have to realize our body is smarter about what it needs than we are. And that's hard to accept, but it's a really important thing to learn that if you're doing the right things, you need to be able to trust the process your body is going through. And this is, I think, one of the biggest stumbling blocks for people with keto and carnivore is they do it because they want to see weight loss, but they don't actually know why it's a good thing for them to do. They're just doing it because they want to get skinny. And I understand, and that's what brings a lot of people into the low carb world is wanting to be healthier and skinnier. But along the way, a lot of us learned that there's a lot more to life than how skinny you can be and how good you're going to look in the bathing suit, right? And the thing that unfortunately if it happens for a lot of people is they just want to be skinny, so they do it and they may not even be doing really keto or carnivore correctly. Like they just kind of do some influencer version of it they've seen somewhere without doing the research. They don't know why it would be good for their body necessarily. They just see it as a weight loss hack. They try it, it doesn't work fast enough, and they move on. And they just go, well, it doesn't work for me, right? And so then that clouds the water and it just creates all of these issues. But if you really understand why keto, why carnivore, why low carb is ancestrally appropriate, why our body is designed to function perfectly when you give it the proper nutrition and you understand what proper nutrition is and what 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 years ago would have even existed for humans to eat. When you really dig into it and understand that, all of a sudden you say, okay, well, if the scale doesn't drop 5 pounds this week, I still know I'm doing the right thing for my body metabolically. And, I know we were talking about blood tests and when, these kinds of things. And it's like, my blood tests are coming back better. I'm working on my A1C. I'm trying to control, my fasting glucose, my fasting insulin. I'm trying to get my hormones balanced out. I'm worried about my triglycerides. I mean, there's so many other things that have nothing to do with the weight on the scale or the size of your waist. And those things all are honestly far more important than what size shirt you have to buy. The extra weight, the extra fat on your body, that's a symptom that maybe there's, something deeper going on. But that's also one that goes away slowly. And if you really stop and you go, how long did it take me to become 400 pounds? Took me a long time to become 400 pounds. That was not like I went to bed and, a couple of weeks later I woke up and I gained 130 pounds. That's not how that happened. Um, so if it goes in forward direction slowly, why do we think in reverse it should happen like 10 times, 20 times faster? That doesn't make any sense. That's biologically, that doesn't make sense. That's not how the human body works. So there's a lot of factors in the whole weight loss thing. And one of the other things we have to consider is that life happens. Cortisol is a huge issue, especially in the modern world. We are spiking our dopamine with blue light from screens. We're constantly overstimulated by entertainment and media and advertising and everything. We don't get outside enough. We're not active enough. We eat junk. I mean, there's so many things we do. Our cortisol is through the roof as a society. And part of my whole journey, I actually got diagnosed autistic and ADHD. So I'm high functioning autistic. I have ADHD. I have OCD. I'm also bipolar. And I'm completely unmedicated and totally regulated with all of those things going on. And I realized one of the things that was causing me to gain weight, even while I was carnivore for a while, was my cortisol. It was completely out of control. And so I had such a hard time controlling what I was eating. I had such a hard time sleeping. It's just like getting up and being active, like just going and living my life felt impossible because my cortisol was out of control because I was living in fight or flight state all the time because of my neurodivergence and just not knowing about this. So there's lifestyle factors, and that can cause you to gain weight. And there's so many different things that go into your overall health journey. So I always try to tell people, encourage them, step on scale once a month. If you have to once a week, but once a month max, right? Like once a week max, once a month if you can step on the scale and you're not even worried about it going down every single time. You're just trying to make sure that it's not suddenly trending upwards because then that would be like, there's something going on under the hood that I need to figure out. If it's staying the same and it's starting to go down a little at a time, you're doing the right stuff. Just keep doing it. And if you gain a little bit here and there, it's okay because your body is going to do what it needs to do to keep you healthy. And if you know why you eat what you eat and why keto or carnivore or whatever you've chosen is the thing that is healthy, then the scale doesn't really matter. As long as you feel good and you're trending in a generally good direction, your energy is up, you're active, you're loving your life, your clothes are not getting tighter on you unless you're going to the gym and, getting your pump on. As long as that stuff is happening, you're doing the right stuff, the scale really doesn't matter. That's a vanity metric.
No, absolutely, and Dustin wanted to call him out. He's right there with you. It's like we talked
Yeah.
about before, that negative comment or that one bad weigh in. It can take you off. And I was thinking about this earlier, to what you were saying, and the reason that I think part of the reason that you think that you should lose weight quicker and people give up and fall off is that they're paying attention to it.
Hmm.
right? Before, when you were gaining the weight, your head was in the sand, right? All the
Yep.
signs were there, but you didn't pay attention week in, week out, day in, day out, watch the number tick up. Because even when you were doing the stuff you weren't supposed to, it would still trend down sometimes, right?
Hmm.
Even when you're eating garbage and you're not moving, you're still going to have those lost periods, and it's for the same reason. Your body just does what it does. So
Yeah.
I think part of it is just I'm paying so close attention. I'm working so hard and I'm doing the things. How dare you go back up, right? How dare
Yeah.
you do that? And it's huge. And to your point about the mental health thing, one of the things that I've noticed is when I'm not eating garbage, zero anxiety. I don't
Hmm.
have to take any medication. It's one of the ones that I would always have it with me.
Hmm.
Even now, where it's like just having it with me makes me feel better because if I know I need it, I need it. But I haven't.
Hmm.
I'll never take it. And it's just because my body has what it needs and it's not stressing out about all the stuff that I can't control. So it helps you get that lower level of just kind of happy,
Hmm.
which is weird that hey, what you put in your body determines how you think, but it is what it is. So yeah, more about the mental health aspect. A lot of people, they overlook it. They think it's
Yeah.
just when I'm skinny I'll be happier. It's like, no, you'll actually be happier way sooner than you lose the weight.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of us, for people with the whole, like, I want to be happy, I want to be skinny, like that kind of thing, people need to go and do some really deep dive research into dopamine and the effect that certain foods have on your dopamine. Because that's so one of the things when you're neurodivergent, you do not stay at the base level of dopamine where the average person does. You're below baseline. But when you have stuff that spikes your dopamine, you go way higher than a normal person would. And then you burn through that dopamine very fast and you crash way back down below baseline. So when the average person's dopamine looks like this, the neurodivergent person's dopamine does this. And so you go from super high levels of dopamine and super low levels of dopamine back and forth rapidly. This is why neurodivergent people tend to consistently become addicts. They really tend to struggle as a whole, a much higher percentage with drug and alcohol addiction, food addiction, porn addiction. I mean, all different kinds of addictions that you can possibly think of. For me, it was binge eating and it was soda. It was like liquid sugar, right? Like I was such an addict, and you're spiking your dopamine trying to get yourself motivated and you barely do, and then you crash, and then you spike your dopamine with these crazy foods and drinks and whatever, and then you crash, and so it's like up and down and up and down, and you destroy your metabolic health in the process. So for anyone who's trying to understand, the happiness and how it relates to being skinny and all these kinds of things, go down the rabbit hole of researching dopamine and the dopamine receptors in your brain, and understanding like the effect protein has on dopamine and all of this stuff. So this is kind of how I think about this for myself. Protein early in the day sets up the methylation process in your brain, which creates the dopamine and the other feel good hormones, the serotonin and the, everything that we need. All of those hormones are created through this process in your brain. And so when you get the methylation process in your brain that causes the clarity and causes your brain to function properly, protein in the morning, plus I take a couple of supplements because I'm already behind the eight ball with a neurodivergent brain, getting that in the morning or early in the day before you start spiking your dopamine and your cortisol with things like, your cell phone and all that, that helps level that out for you. So you don't get crazy high highs and you don't get super low lows. You get more of an even keel level of dopamine. And so I use animal protein to try to help level that all out. And then if my brain feels too on fire because of the ADHD, animal fat helps me soothe my brain, which makes a lot of sense because when you get fat, you're getting cholesterol. Cholesterol is used to make your hormones. That's where all of the regulation is going to come from in your brain. So fat soothes my brain and protein fuels it and helps it function properly, and that keeps my dopamine much more regular and much more leveled out. So I really intentionally use that stuff to keep myself really regulated. And none of that has anything to do with being skinny. The happiness doesn't come from being skinny. The happiness is from regulating my brain, understanding how to live a life that I truly love and that I'm fulfilled in. The six pack I hope to someday have will come because I'm eating foods that allow my body over time to slowly heal, and my body will burn my extra fat, and eventually, hopefully, you'll be able to see the muscles again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's a great way of thinking about it. And what I like about your approach and everything that you talk about is like with anything, there's a spectrum of it. You have the people that
Mhm,
like I eat the same three foods every week. That's all they eat. They eat
mhm,
like a power bowl. They'll eat bacon and eggs, and they're happy with it. But you have your creative approach with it, especially when it comes to
mhm.
cooking. Like you say, you're behind the eight ball when it comes to the neurodivergence, but it's also superpower when it comes to being creative. So
Yeah.
that's your weakness, right? So. I mean, the being creative and bringing it into your diet and your lifestyle. I imagine that helps a lot for somebody like
Mm.
yourself because it seems like maybe you like a little bit more variety than somebody. It's like I'll eat the same three things every day. How does that shape?
Yeah, yeah. I can eat the same handful of foods over and over and over and over and over and over. That's a really common neurodivergent thing. But then another really common neurodivergent thing is you hit a point where you go, okay, that's enough, and you never want to eat that food again. So there's a number of kind of different elements to it, but really what it comes down to is I can eat the same things consistently until I wake up one day and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just jonesing for anything other than that? And then that's when I do something. I have a recipe. Whatever. I'm creative with whatever food it is, and I throw little variations on the things that I eat consistently, so they're always just a little slightly tweaked, right? It's just fun. Um, I do that. I eat a lot more simply than I think most people would think I do because I create recipes. I think they have the impression that I eat my own recipes like every single day. That's like a couple of times a week, usually max. And um, I tend to eat very, very simply, but when I do want something, I want to be able to be creative and have something fun without feeling like I'm going to go off the rails and trying to white knuckle my way through to not run down the street and grab a pizza. So I have those things as options, and the creativity aspect, it gives me an outlet for all these random ideas. And I think that, there's also a thing like neurodivergence comes along with sensory issues a lot of times. So texture can be very off-putting to some people depending on what it is, or sometimes you want certain stimulation, so you want certain textures. It can even be so serious as for people to have something called ARFID, which is like a really severe food aversion, where it's like there's a handful of safe foods and everything else is the wrong taste, the wrong texture, the wrong everything. And like I don't have ARFID, although I'm maybe a very mild version of it in certain cases, but I don't really have like a severe ARFID kind of a reaction. But there are people who do that will gag on anything that is not the handful of things they can eat. And so, I look at this as an opportunity and I go, well, what can we do to create as close to the original as possible while having better quality ingredients go into it? And I think maybe sometimes people might not understand that if you're able to eat the same three carnivore foods, right? You eat steaks, you eat eggs, you eat bacon, maybe that's it, right? If that's what you have and you're like, I never would need a recipe, I'm good every single day, brother, good on you. Go for it and do it, because I'm not saying that you should eat recipes. I'm saying if you want to eat recipes, I have them, right? And that's a really important distinction. If you can eat the same three carnivore foods for the rest of your life, do it, and I'm sure it will serve you well. But if that's the case, then you're not the person that needs help because you've already got it figured out. There are so many people out there who don't have it figured out, who do need the help, and the recipes are the things that convince them that they can try it, even if they don't stick with it full time. Like maybe they get to the point where they're like, yeah, I started with the recipes, I did that for like a year, and then it just got to be too much work. So I just got really simple, and now I eat steaks and eggs and bacon, and I'm good. Like, excellent. Then we transitioned you over to where you were stable and you don't need that, and that's amazing. But I'm also trying to, part of what I do, I'm trying to make keto and carnivore low carb cooking like rock and roll and cool, because it is cool. It's something that is really super cool. And, you know, if you look at like vegan groups, or you look at big food, you look at big pharma, you look at big government, you look at all of these different things that are out there, there are amazing marketing campaigns that have convinced us for decades that things like eating vegan food is healthy. It's good for you. It's cool. It's cool to be a vegan. You belong if you're a vegan, right? And listen, I have friends who are vegan. I have nothing against the vegans. I love the vegans. I don't agree that that's the right way to eat, but I love the people anyway. But the marketing is so good. So if we actually want to take the message of a proper human diet and we want to try to help the world, we want to go out there, we want to reach the people who truly need help. You have to make the marketing good enough that it breaks through all the noise to have a chance of reaching someone and giving them some hope. And that's what it's really all about. That's why I do things the way that I do. I don't make carnivore pasta noodles out of chicken meat so that carnivores who are out there who eat nothing but steak every day feel the need to stop eating steak and eat my pasta. It's not what I do. It's not the purpose of what I do. The purpose of what I do is when I get a message from someone that says, my 15-year-old grandson came over and he's a really picky eater, and I'm trying to just feed him a little bit better. And I made him spaghetti and meatballs with a marinara sauce that didn't have any additional sugar added to it. And I used your carnivore noodles, and he tried them and he really liked them. And now I've just taken the overall carb count of his day and I've gone by bringing that down. That's why I do what I do. I also have, I thought this was so cool. I got this text message the other day. Do you know Maggie the Rancher?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think I've seen some.
Yeah. I love Maggie. She's an amazing human being. She's like 85, almost 86 years old. And I mean, she could beat me up. I'm telling you, she is so cool. What an amazing lady. But she messaged me and she said they have these friends that have a son who's ADHD, and he was like struggling to even go to school because his ADHD was out of control. So they switched over to carnivore trying to help with this. And switching to a carnivore diet has basically brought his ADHD under control to where he can function, he can go to school, he's calm, he's doing all this, but he already knows he wants to go to culinary school. He wants to be a chef. So she's like, your cookbook is going to make such a huge difference because he's going to be able to be carnivore, but also go to culinary school and learn to do this and cook carnivore food and all this kind of stuff. Like it's a movement. It's a slow change, but it's a movement because there are people just like this little boy that want to be able to do this kind of stuff, but they need to be able to eat certain things because of what it does for their mental health, their physical health, whatever. And so she was like, your cookbook isn't even out, and you're already changing the life of a little boy who wants to be a chef, you know? Like, that's the reason that I create carnivore chicken meat pasta. Not because someone who thinks that that's a silly idea should somehow stop eating their steak and start eating my pasta. The world has so many different kinds of people, and there's a lot of people that need help. And if we're going to reach those people, we have to have as many options as possible to try to help get them there and transition them over to a better lifestyle without it seeming so scary and seeming like they're giving up everything that they love because they're too brain fogged to understand.
Yeah, and two points of that is first you have the people, and we've all heard this from somebody somewhere at some point in time. It's I do that, but I can't give up blank. It's like great, try this, see if it's
Hmm.
a good enough alternative to where it'll scratch that itch when you need that itch scratched. But then secondly, to the point about helping that little boy is food is such a huge part of every culture, right? It's right at the core because it was a group of people that had access to certain foods and they made the most of it, and then it gets shared around the world as we all, everybody got mixed in. And it's such an important part of culture. People spend so much time and effort making their food, and that's exactly what it takes for something like this, a proper human
Hmm.
diet to be able to reach more people is that culture saying, hey, you know what, this is really what we're eating. This is our environment, this is what's around us, and this is how we
Hmm.
can use it to kind of reach into those other areas and have those, because again, it's cultural, right?
Hmm.
There's people, I can't give up pasta, I'm Italian, I can't do it, right? I need lasagna, whatever it is, and being able to
Yeah.
reach in there and just say, try it and see if it helps, right? It doesn't cost you anything.
Yep.
And
Absolutely. There's so much culture that is tied to our food, and it's one thing to try to change the physiological portion of your food, that it goes in and it causes certain things in your body and you get healthier. It's one thing to change that. It's a completely different thing to shift culture. I mean, that's something that takes decades. And even then, people are very resistant to it because culture is part of what has helped the human race survive. Um, and especially, I don't think a lot of people think maybe this in depth about this. This is the autism. This is where my brain goes. 1,000 years ago, if somebody cooked food for you and gave it to you, and especially if they took the time to make the best version of it they possibly could, that was an act of love. That was an act of friendship that went deeper than almost anything you could do, because that was saying, I'm giving my resources to you because I value your survival above my own in this moment. At the very least, I value your survival the same as I do my own, because I'm giving you resources that help you survive. And if I'm taking the time to make it presented in a way that's beautiful, I'm trying to make it the best version I have, I'm trying to make it more delicious for you, it's a better experience. Not only do I prioritize your survival, I prioritize your comfort. I prioritize your satisfaction. Food is deeply, deeply tied to what it means to communicate your love and your care to another person. Because of that, culture is all interwoven around that. And so that's why we have food at celebrations. That's why we have food for funerals. That's why we have food for all of these different things, because food is tied to culture. And whether it should or shouldn't be that way, some people have arguments on both sides of that. Whether it should or shouldn't be that way is irrelevant. It just is. So we can either sit and complain that it is a way that we don't want it to be, or we can actually just do something to help the people that live in the real world where all of that exists. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help people understand culture and food are all tied together. So let's work within the confines of that. And let's actually show people we prioritize their survival, we prioritize their comfort, their satisfaction, but we also prioritize their metabolic health because of the specific ingredients we chose to make those things with. And you can do all of those at the same time. And it's like, it's going to be, at least in my lifetime, impossible to get the world to untie the food and the culture connections that currently exist with terrible food. But we can start to unravel that and replace it with better alternatives. And then maybe someday down the road, maybe that really changes. One of my favorite people in this space is Dr. Kiltz, Dr. Robert Kiltz. Amazing guy. And he was talking with me when I did an interview. We were talking about this on his channel. And he said, so basically, what you're doing is, he said, you're making noodles out of chicken meat because 100 years from now, you want someone to go, well, of course, pasta is made out of chicken meat. What would it be made out of? He's like, you're trying to shift food culture in a long term viewpoint, like something that is going to exist long after I'm gone. So I'm trying to help as many people as I can now, but I'm also trying to set up the idea that these things can change the world 100, 200 years from now and can affect the health of people that will never be alive during my lifetime. So it goes so, so much deeper. And you're right that culture is so deeply tied into food. We have to be able to work within the confines of that if we want to help the real people that live in the world right now.
Where do you think we're at in that decades long process? Like, is like let's look back at, like, smoking and tobacco.
Hmm.
Is everybody was doing it? It came out that it was bad for you. It started getting a lot of studies coming in. It was bad for you. People didn't care yet, and it took decades of
Hmm.
it's bad for you. It's going to kill you. People are having, cancers and all this horrible stuff happen to them. And then the
Hmm.
secondhand smoking started to become bad, so people started to care a little bit more. And it got to the point where, hey, we're putting a Surgeon General warning, and it's still in gas stations, right? So
Hmm.
where are we kind of on that? Where we're getting to the point where if you all you eat is meat, it's you're not going to live very long. You're going to get scurvy. Like, we're still fairly early in that
Yeah.
process. So you're right; it's decades out. But kind of where do you think we're at?
Well, I think we're at the infancy of this whole thing. And unfortunately, this is a really important time, in my viewpoint anyway. And I say unfortunately because we're at a crossroads where if we continue going the direction we're going and we keep pushing and we do it with a level head, and as a community, we work for coming up with options that it's like, okay, here's the ultimate carnivore thing. Here's kind of options to help you get there. And here's the standard American diet. And we're trying to move you along this path. And as a community, if we can be supportive and if we can keep our stuff in line, and if we can focus on doing what needs to be done, and we can prioritize helping people over our own ego and improving to people how great we are as a carnivore, right? If we can prioritize helping people who need help and we can continue moving the narrative in that direction and not getting upset when we don't get the perfection that we want, but moving the narrative the right way, I think 20 years from now, there will be a significant change compared to what we see today. I think there will be a lot of people who are low carb, who are keto, who are moving towards carnivore. I think a lot of big food companies will go out of business or they'll be changing and they'll be offering new things. That's a whole other discussion. Um, I think we'll see that. But if all we do is the infighting and the dogma and the judging people who don't do it right and whatever, if we start acting crazy and we try to judge the rest of the world because they don't know what we already do, then we will ruin the message of a proper human diet and it will in time slowly start to trail off because the desire for addiction will be so strong and our solution to it will just look and sound crazy because we can't use a level head to communicate it. So I think we're at a really important crossroads right now. I think the community as a whole needs to really focus on continuing to promote this concept of low carb. And yeah, there's a lot of different variables and there's different camps and different viewpoints on different things. That's fine. We should all still be able to get along and as one unified voice, one unified message, tell the rest of the world, we're not here to beat you up. We're here to try to help because this has helped us and we think it will help you. And you don't have to be perfect. We just care about you as fellow human beings and we want to see you get healthy. And this is what worked for us. Maybe you should give it a try. Maybe, just maybe, there is hope that this could actually be something that would help you. And if we can get that message out, there is a real future for the proper human diet. And there is a real future for this community because it is changing so many lives and it is growing so quickly. And there are so many people interested in this. We just have to make sure that we are keeping our foot on the gas, but not taking a whole bunch of crazy left-hand turns while we're driving full speed.
Absolutely. For people out there that, maybe they've never heard of carnivore or haven't looked too far into it, or, maybe even keto, where do you recommend somebody that, let's say they're metabolically unhealthy, they're
Hmm.
overweight, they're obese, and they want to get started, they want to, start moving in that right direction, they're ready to kind of give it up because you can't really help anybody that doesn't want to be helped, right?
Hmm.
The smoker isn't going to quit smoking until they're ready to quit. So for those
Right.
people that are ready, that they're fed up being sick, where do you
Hmm.
recommend they start? There's this whole spectrum. How do they
Yeah.
find where they land?
Well, it's interesting. Dr. Barry actually has a couple of videos that helped me significantly on this. He has a Keto 101 playlist and he has a Carnivore 101 playlist on his YouTube channel. I would suggest you go watch all of those videos because you need to understand why you're going to do it. Because if you don't have a why, you will never stick with the what. It is impossible. If you do not have a good why, you will never stick with the what. So you need to understand why you're going to do this. And you also need to understand by doing the research why the things you're doing would be good for you. Why would low carb be good inside your body? Understand, you don't have to have a medical degree here to understand this stuff. This is simple concepts. And Dr. Barry's videos are very good in those playlists at breaking it down. You need to understand why this matters. learn about that, understand the ins and outs of it as best you can. So you at least are going into this with some confidence of, I really think this is something that's going to help me. This is really something I believe. And then, just a shameless little self plug. If you go to my website, I actually have a free ebook called Keto and Carnivore for Real People that is written. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nutritionist, it's not medical advice. It is just written from the standpoint of a redneck guitar player turned YouTube carnivore chef. Um, Talking about all of the information I wish I would have been told when I first started this. Starts at the beginning like you know nothing and helps you understand the basics of why this matters. It's an easy read. There's a few simple recipes in there to get you started. It's free. You can go to my website and do that. And then you need to be involved in the community. Interact with people in the chat. If you really want extra support, like a lot of community, like I'm on my own here, I'm lost, I know nothing, but I'm in, I want to do this, I want to get healthy, but I don't know what to do. Someone help me. I've got a private community called The Band. You can come join. We are a super supportive and kind group of people. Anyone in there who doesn't act like that, I will kick them out because I don't care about them being a part of the community if that's what they're going to act like. So it's about being supportive. You can be a vegan and you can come join the band. I don't care. As long as you're respectful and we're all working together, that's the whole point. And I generally do keto and carnivore. Amanda Decker from Clear Path Medical. She is in there. She is part of the group, and she has a health coach, Rebecca, who does health coaching. And we don't do medical advice, but we have health coaching that they're doing, and you can ask them questions on the medical information side. Her whole team at Clear Path Medical is in there. We have some other special things that go on in there. I do private live streams, Q&As. You can always come and ask me questions. You get direct access to things. That's a great way to get involved, but you don't have to be a part of my private community. There's a lot of communities out there. So pick the one that fits you. If you're not into the rock and roll cooking, Chris Cooking Nashville thing, that's cool. There's a lot of places you can join. I'm the culinary coach in Dr. Barry's group, the PhD community, the tribe, as they're known. That's an amazing community, and you get extra access to Dr. Barry to ask your questions. And there's a thing called Dr. Barry AI that you can actually type in questions, and it's an AI model that's been trained on Dr. Barry's videos. So it will answer you just like Dr. Barry does based on all of the information he's put out there. So there's a lot of different communities. Steak and Butter Gal, the Steak and Butter Gang, there's a great community there. Dr. Kiltz has his own community. Kelly Hogan has a support community. I mean, there's a lot of these people that you can go be involved in communities, and you don't have to necessarily join a private community that's like a membership thing. You can just go be involved in the YouTube comment section on videos like mine and Dustin from Keto Simple, who's here. He has a channel where he answers questions, and he has a bunch of people that are part of a community he's cultivated with his channel. I mean, there's so many places, but you have to be involved with other people who are doing this, because if you're like, oh no, I don't need that, I'm good, I've got it, I'm just gonna, just eat the stuff I should eat and all is good. That's great until it's not, because people in your life, it happened to me too, it's happened to every single one of us I've ever talked to. People in your life are not going to understand, because this is such a weird thing, because we have all been marketed to for so long about what is healthy. And so when you try to deprogram all of the things we have been taught, and you try to understand this from the ground up, this is a grassroots movement, ground up here. When you try to understand that and deprogram the way you just naturally start to think about stuff, you have to have other people who are like-minded, who can help you and who can check you, because sometimes you're going to come across something and go, hey, I heard about this carnivore pill that you can take and you can eat all of the cake you want and it turns it into steak when you eat it. Is that true? Like, that's a little extreme, but you're going to hear about stuff out there which is just a whole bunch of BS. Right? It's just people that are trying to make money by telling you you need supplements. You're going to get exogenous ketone companies that are like, we're going to help you super boost your fat loss. All you got to do is take our ketone pills. You don't need any of that. Here's this super green mixed with this special berry that grows on the side of this mountain, just, over here in the Himalayas. It's the only place in the world, and it's the key to true human health. It's BS. They just want to take your money. Right? So it's good to have other people who are around you that are your sounding board to help you keep these things in check, because I've fallen prey to that marketing in my life. I think all of us have from time to time. And so having people around you who understand what you're going through, can support you when it gets difficult, because it will get difficult from time to time, and who can help check you when maybe you're starting to head off some kind of strange path and help keep you solid and sound and objective. That's really important. So watch all of Dr. Barry's videos, plus a whole bunch of other creators. Go get my free ebook, pre-order my cookbook if you like all of the, the recipes, like that kind of stuff. That's what I do. Watch my videos if you like the recipes and have fun. Um, and that gives you all the special recipes for the holidays and the times when maybe eating a steak and eggs might not be quite as successful as the other 6 days out of the week. um, and be involved. Be involved in the community and talk to people and meet people and get to know people. I mean, the reason you and I are talking right now, Anthony, is because Dustin, Keto Simple, here in the chat, he and I are really good friends. He was on your channel, and so he sent you my way, and now we get to be friends, and now we get to support each other because you're on this journey as well, and this is how we do this. This is how we help each other, and when we get through a stage of this, we reach back to someone who's a little behind us on that path and give them a hand up. That's what it's all about. So go find the people who will give you a hand up.
Absolutely. Well said. Community. It's one of the most important things in all of your life, not just this niche, but very
Mm.
well said. We don't know what we don't know. There's people that's been exactly where you are. No matter what you're going through or the situation you're facing, there's other people that have faced at least similar. So finding that
Mhm.
tribe, finding that group that are able to help you and warn you about what's coming down the pipe, super valuable. And
Yeah.
I'll be sharing, all your links in the description. Go in, check it out. Check out his cookbook. Give him a follow. Give him a subscribe. He's doing awesome things. He's changing culture, which is at the core, of what we need to do. We need
Mm.
less of the bad stuff plastered everywhere, and more of, hey, we're coming forward with a heart. We want people to be healthy, not just trying to sell you, snake oil. It's less about
Mhm.
what what you're taking and more about what you're not doing. So making sure
Yeah.
you're doing that, following people like Chris, following people like Dustin, just some awesome people doing awesome things. And I really thank you for coming on and being honest both about the progress and the setbacks. I really appreciate you taking the time with me.
Yeah.
And everybody else out there watching us, let us know in the comments what stood out to you. If you found value with this, feel free, subscribe to Big Guy Grind, and we'll be
Mhm.
having more conversations like this in the future because there's so many awesome people out there just like Chris. So again, I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much for having me, my friend. It has been a pleasure, and I hope we can talk again and keep track as you start to succeed and even more and more.
Sounds great.